Welcome, welcome. We're here today to do a quick interview with Derek Hart, who's going to be one of our presenters for this for the Journey to Secure. And the reason I reached out to Derek is because he has a superpower that I've always wanted to ask him about. Derek, how do you read hearts? How are you able to read people's hearts such that you know what needs to be said in between partners in a couple, in a way that helps repair, in a way that helps deeper connection, and especially supports people in growing into greater security?
Wow, that's a great question. That's I'm so close to it, and I sometimes feel like I'm just almost channeling it in a way. So to make sense of how I do that is just a really good question. So I have a couple show up in front of me, and imagine they're sitting there and they have met me for the very first time, and I've known them for 2 or 3 minutes. Okay. By the time people show up in front of me, they're usually really hurting. And if I ask them right now in the very first meeting, can you tell me what's bothering the other person? All right. They'll get it right 25%.
Wow.
They'll be able to say, well, sex isn't good, or we fight about money. They'll be able to name all the details and things. So right from the beginning, I don't believe it's an arrogant thing I'm saying. I know right from the beginning they have no idea what's bothering each other. No idea. They know they're chasing each other around the house, or they're avoiding and shutting down and closing down. And these are patterns we're kind of hearing about lately, with attachment theory and things like that. So two people have no idea what they're really truly upset about down to the core. Now, let's just say they did. Let's say they really are clear on what they're hurting about. They don't know how to solve it.
Right.
They don't know how to actually do the thing that's necessary to not be continually hurting about that. Okay. So one thing I'll add right now is, I started in 1990. So, I'm going on, 33 years here of being dedicated to witnessing people sitting in front of me hurting. So I've kind of heard all the main scenarios of why people are hurting, right? And how they're hurting. So brand new couple shows up in front of me. They're telling me what's bothering them. And the stories are very unique, right? Like they have a unique story. They came together. Everyone's got their own kind of thumbprint, beautiful story. But the number of things that are bothering them down to the core are very, very small. It's a very small list of what's really bothering them. Like what's one of the ones on that small list? When you look at me, I get the feeling you don't like me. I mean, that's a disaster, right? Just think about that. You walk in the room, you see your partner, and the feeling you get immediately is they don't like me. They don't like what I'm about to say. I'm going to get judged. I'm going to get critiqued for what I'm about to say. That is the start of total disconnect. And we have all these adult responsibilities and topics and in-laws and sex and money and children and responsibilities piled on top of it. But a long time ago, one of us didn't like the other, and we went to bed that night still feeling that. And that's kind of the disaster, where it starts. So how do I know what's going on? I know by starting to talk about this very short list. I'm not just taking a guess from their story. Well, if you're upset about money, is it because you lost your job last year and that's really hard? No. I'm coming up with emotionally what usually goes on in people. And as I start talking,
Mhm.
I'm actually modeling for them what I want them to do with each other,
Mhm.
which means I start talking, and like a hawk, I am watching them and their body language and their eye contact with, now the camera,
Mhm.
and what they're looking at me about, and they're looking at each other, and if their face is getting flushed, and if they're rolling their eyes, and
Mhm.
if they're connecting with what I'm saying, that means I'm on track.
Mhm.
And a lot of silence happens when I'm on track with them. So I know I'm going down the right path.
Mhm.
And it's usually something kind of like uh, when I walk in the room, I see you look at me, and I'm walking on eggshells before I even begin talking about what I'm frustrated about. I mean, it starts before we start having an argument.
Mhm.
Before we start having an argument, the argument exists in our brain when we wake up in the morning with the person we roll over and look at.
Mhm.
So it's like it's locked in place in their brains. And I know that. And I don't say that with any like I know something more about them than they know about themselves. What I'm saying is they're hurting. Relationships are quite difficult.
Mhm.
It's quite difficult to understand what to do in those scenarios. And I kind of jump in and enter their world with them.
Mhm.
And they feel that.
Mhm.
So that's a really small explanation. How do I really do what I do? Being totally dedicated to it for so long and messing up
Mhm.
as much as couples mess up with each other.
Mhm.
I had years and years to mess up and get it wrong and say, well, this might be going on, and people telling me not at all. That's not what's going on. So
Mhm.
anyway, that's a
Beautiful.
small answer.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. My experience with you, because we've me and my wife, and also me and a partner have come to see you, and there's a sensitivity that you bring to the table that is also like the modeling. It feels like it's the modeling you were speaking of, like really going into the subtleties of things that would otherwise maybe dismiss, like, oh, no, I do like you, like, don't worry about
Right.
that.
Right.
And to
Right.
actually go, no, no, that's actually really important.
Yeah.
This stuff really, those little things that really matter,
Yeah.
that when that gets solved, like everything else just comes back into place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
And you, me, all of us, we know when a moment happens, when recognition happens for what we're really hurting about. I got reminded yesterday from a client. You seen the movie Rain Man,
Yeah.
right? Remember Rain Man?
Mhm.
Remember the end of Rain Man? They order pancakes, right? And the pancakes come, and Dustin Hoffman is once again gonna say, where's my syrup? Like, nobody in my life has ever cared about me enough to remember to have the syrup here right when I get my pancakes. So right when that happens on his face, Tom Cruise pulls up the syrup and hands it to him.
Mhm.
And that is the moment I'm talking about. That is the moment that must occur with a couple for them to reconnect, to permanently reconnect and feel safe again. When they can do that moment, they're done working with me.
Wow.
That's the goal.
I've seen something similar like that happen in mediation.
Yeah.
When I've been in mediation, there always seems to be a moment where just the other person becomes human again instead of somebody scary.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's
Yeah.
an amazing moment. And that is a moment that, it's amazing to me that I could do this for all these years and so many hours of it and still be so fascinated when that moment happens, because I can lead them right up to that moment, but I cannot make that final moment happen. That's a
Mhm.
spontaneous moment that occurs when the three of us have made it safe enough in little tiny slices for them both to drop into that moment together.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
that's a miraculous moment that causes awe in me almost every time. I mean, still, I'm like, wow, they were willing, not just willing, but capable, wanting it,
Oof.
fell into it by accident, got rid of 90% of the things they're doing incorrectly to prevent that moment from happening. It's a miracle. It's amazing when it happens. And it's universal.
Yeah.
One of the things I say a lot is, if there was somebody watching the three of us that spoke Cantonese, right, like a different language,
That was so good.
they would watch and go, oh, that's vulnerability. That just happened. They love each other again. So that's just amazing to me.
Wow. Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. I mean, I've certainly had moments with you. I've had moments without you. I've had moments with my son where I was like, I can make a better choice right now. And I lead with vulnerability, and, you know, and I express it, at the very least, at least have a sense of, you know, maybe how this is occurring to him. And even just that step of willingness to feel for him or with him, and feel guilty at the same time sometimes, or even ashamed, but not in a way that stops me from feeling.
Yeah. You bring up something that you know, it occurs to me, there's a part that's tricky for almost all of us. So as you were just saying, you know, you make a choice to be vulnerable. So now a couple sits in front of me, and technically they're learning things, right? They're learning about vulnerability, and I'm showing them some, and they're showing each other some. Now, one person goes, okay, I'm going to be vulnerable. I'm going to do this. I'm going to try. Now, I might think they're vulnerable and or missing parts. They think they're being very vulnerable. The tricky part to this attachment theory stuff that we're, you know, is such a buzzword these days, is when that person attempts to be vulnerable, let's say it's a husband, if the wife still has bottled up inside all this resentment, all this pain, she cannot detect the vulnerability. She might say, oh, he's very sarcastic when he does that. When he says, I love you, he's very mean. I might even be saying, look pretty kind to me. What matters is her response is always 100% true and accurate. Whatever, it's accurate that she's feeling that. Okay. But that moment hurts him if she does that.
Right.
So he took a risk.
Wow.
And got hurt.
Yeah.
And they both have to know that happened.
Wow.
And what to do next.
Yeah, because
and I'm there a lot with people.
That seems like the path of no return.
Yeah.
Oh shit, I risked, I failed, and now I don't know if I could do it again.
Yeah. And now let's turn that around. And what I would show them, let's say I was talking for the husband, right? You know, I would step into the husband and I would say, oh, I just put so much effort into saying this differently and sharing it differently. And I felt very tender inside, and you still get hurt by me. That tells me how much you've been hurting in how we talk to each other. So I just want to acknowledge that. And I want to acknowledge myself that I tried. I will try again. I kind of want to run away. I want to get mad right now, but I'm not going to. We're both hurting at the same time. Let's just be with that for a moment.
Yeah, let's not continue hurting each other. Let's just hurt.
On the same team, we both hurt at the same time. That's the start. And that can happen in the first hour, just that. And that's a revelation to people. Wow, it's both true.
Yeah.
We're both hurting.
And it can be a point of connection, kind of a wild point of connection too. We're both hurting right now.
Yep.
Wow. Yeah, that's intimacy.
Yeah.
All right. And so imagine you're going to be doing some version of that in your session.
Yeah. I shall
Hmm.
maybe I'll bring up a topic and kind of explain it this way. I'll probably bring up what happens to be in my mind that day, and then we'll talk with some couples and show some actual connections and see if they're willing to jump in for 7-10 minutes at a time with me.
Beautiful. So if you're watching this and you're part of a couple, like bring your partner over willingly, of course. No surprises.
Yeah.
But it's a real gift to have the chance to be in this sort of trialogue with you. And I know that because I've experienced it many times, and I've sent people to Derek many times. If you're watching this, like I do coaching, but not specifically with couples. But ever since I've known Derek, I've recognized the deeper aspects of empathy that he teaches to couples, and it always feels true and right. And yeah, it's definitely somebody that's worth following on Facebook and just continuing to get these little pearls of wisdom.
No, I appreciate that. Appreciate that. So Thursday, 4 o'clock, right?
Thursday, 4 o'clock. And also I hear that you have a bonus offering. So if people sign up for the 5-day, of course they can get a day pass, but if they sign up for the 5 days, they get one of the 8 bonus offerings, and this one is from Derek. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, I have a pretty short ebook on there. It's called "The Only Proven Way to Restore a Marriage." I had to write it down to remember my own title, and it's a little ebook, and it probably leads to my website, understandeachother.com,
Mm-hmm.
and people can sign up there and always do an intro session with me and get their relationship back on track.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And so if thank you, Derek. And if
Yeah.
you've been watching this far, and you're paying attention, then you can use the discount code Derek secret code.
Yeah.
Very complicated. One word, all uppercase, Derek secret code, and this will give you a $50 discount on the Journey to Secure. We have 20 presenters, 35 sessions, including Derek here, and I'm so happy that you're doing this with us.
It's going to be great. Look forward to it.
Mhm.
And we'll see if we can create a couple of those miraculous moments. I think it'll happen. It usually does in a couple hours. People are pretty willing.
Yeah, beautiful. All right.
All right. Thanks, Philippe.